I joined the Marine Corps on my 24th birthday. My dad was the officer that swore me in. I think that I was drawn to the Marine Corps because of the current situation I was in. I didn't like, I wanted to change, so I joined the Marine Corps because it had worked for everyone else in my family. And I got blown up, and I was severely wounded, and I came home, and I had to recover from that.
There are actually 3 sets of symptoms that make up PTSD. So the precursor is that somebody has to experience a potentially traumatic event. But then there are 3 sets of symptoms. The first set of symptoms are what we call the re-experiencing symptoms. The re-experiencing symptoms are things like intrusive memories, flashbacks, nightmares, things like that. The second set of symptoms are what we call the avoidance symptoms. Those are things like not wanting to go into situations that remind you of the event, avoiding conversations that have to do with the traumatic event, emotional numbing, things like that. And then actually the third set of symptoms in PTSD are what we call the arousal symptoms. And arousal symptoms are things like hypervigilance, being on guard all the time, always scanning for signs of danger. Having an exaggerated startle response, something like that. So those are some of the most visible and classic symptoms of PTSD.
Every warrior that's coming back, you know, has been changed by his or her experience. Some of these changes are awful, and some of these changes are magnificent, and they're not mutually exclusive. Some of the people who have the most incredible post-traumatic growth are also the ones that are having you know, nightmares every night. Everyone is going to be affected by these catastrophic events. Only a minority, a significant minority, maybe 15–20% depending on the event, are going to actually have something that's clinically diagnosable.
I would say it's unfair to say that my psychological injury or my post-traumatic stress is derived from the bomb itself. I would say that it comes from the previous 6 months in a combat zone, the constant adrenaline dumps from firefights. You know, the IED that I lost my eyesight in was not my first, it was my third. Multiple blasts. The stress of just living in a combat zone where at any time a mortar could land or a rocket could land or a sniper round could go off, or when you're walking down the street somebody could fire upon you from a rooftop or something like that. I think that all of that leads up to this psychological injury.
The primary and irreducible psychological injury from war is the persistence in the civilian life of those valid adaptations that allowed you to survive when other people are trying to kill you. Those adaptations are in the brain, in the mind, in the form of social connection that people form, and also in the culture that people come to inhabit in the armed forces.
From a public health preventive strategy, in the same way that we put fluoride in the water and that we vaccinate people, I think we need to prepare ourselves for the inevitability. We shouldn't be surprised that bad stuff's going to happen, and we shouldn't be surprised that some people are not going to be able to cope with it and are going to have problems, and that those problems may be clinically significant, which is where the diagnosis, but for most of them, they're going to be, they can wreck a marriage, they can wreck a career, they can wreck a friendship, but it might not be PTSD. It might be some post-traumatic problem, so we need to be aware of that.
We don't feel like we're victims. We don't feel like we're suffering. We just feel frustrated in trying to come to grips with the things that have happened to us and trying to learn to live with them. How to live productively and happily with our experiences that we've had. This doesn't mean I'm a victim. It doesn't mean I suffer at all. You know, it just means that I'm trying to understand what happened to me. I'm trying to understand what I've experienced, and I'm trying to learn how to live with it, and I'm trying to live the best, most happy life I can, just like anyone else would.